following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio streaming and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Leanna Kersner, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. Now, I'm going to apologize off the top if I sound funny, if I have some trouble talking this episode. I've been talking about having Invisalign in, and I have managed to cut the inside of my lower lip. So talking is a little difficult and painful, and I wasn't going to do a show this week, but I have two very, very special guests from Harrison's Hope, which is a charity. It's an advocacy and support group for people with, I always mess this up. The common term for it is fetal alcohol syndrome. It is a spectrum disorder. So fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. There we go. It affects an unknown number of people because it's difficult to diagnose, and there are some legal and definitional challenges inherent in getting a diagnosis. But September is Awareness Month for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And specifically, September 9th is a big day in this community. So I am pushing through and dealing with like the ows to have on two ladies that Mary and Allison from Harrison's Hope. Their stories are very powerful and they're really great speakers. And so I'm going to do my best, even though I am no expert in this area. That's why I have people who know what they're talking about. But I am going to set the table about this condition. Now, fetal alcohol syndrome, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, is caused by exposure to alcohol in the womb. That, strangely, some people think it's hereditary. It's not. But it is exposure to alcohol in the womb. It can happen at any point in prenatal development. There is no safe time to drink alcohol while pregnant. And this is obviously a problem because a lot of people, pregnancies are unplanned. They don't know they're pregnant for a while. So alcohol harms cell development. So it's going to harm the growing cells in, a fetus. And obviously, the severity, the impact is not just about the timing of the consumption of alcohol. Obviously, it's about the amount of alcohol, the frequency of drinking while pregnant. But I repeat, there is no safe amount of alcohol to consume while pregnant. And other things such as stress, smoking, nutrition obviously come into play. And this is the thing that's challenging about fetal exposure to alcohol. There are more than 100 other health conditions that are related to consumption of alcohol while pregnant, or commonly occur together, something we call comorbid with fetal alcohol syndrome. And they can affect pretty much every area of development. This is why it's hard to, diagnose. It can affect behavior. It can affect communication. It can affect attention and hyperactivity. It can affect physical development, balance, mental development, memory, learning, social skills, physical health, emotional regulation is a big one. In the experience that I've had with people with this condition. And it's complicated by the fact that, this situation, this challenge we have in society is about, a lack of community support, a lack of education, a lack of choices. And a lot of the time, we're also seeing things like the use of other substances, unemployment, housing, homelessness or underhousing, legal issues, right? Other mental health issues, which is why people are self-medicating. I mean, addiction is a mental health issue. Issues with school. And one of the things we do see is sexually inappropriate behaviors in some of these communities. Now, when I was a peer counselor in my teens, I grew up in the Jane Finch area of Toronto, which had a lot of, it's fairly notorious, which I think it was still a great place to grow up. But yeah, we were a little more aware of these sorts of things because, it was also the 90s where unfortunately crack babies were something of a punchline. I'm not saying this because I condone it. I'm just saying humor was rougher back then. But there was a bit more awareness that, some kids just really struggled with this stuff more than others. And so I was really surprised to hear when I met Allison, one of the guests you're going to hear from, at the Finding a Way event I did up in Sutton. Shout out to Finding a Way. Thanks, Danielle, for putting us together. I was really surprised to hear about the lack of support, the lack of kind of formal intervention, in part because getting a definitive diagnosis is so difficult. And of course, in healthcare systems, you need a diagnosis for, formal diagnosis for any of that funding, any of that assistance to unlock. And another thing is because it is, a lifelong thing, there's no cure. It's preventable, but there's no cure. But, there are things that we can do for someone living with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. People don't want to touch it. It's one of these shameful, let's not talk about it because, it involves somebody drinking while pregnant. And I've always kind of felt, but that isn't the kid's fault. And as somebody who experienced the effects of being shunned as a kid for the behavior of her parents firsthand, I know how isolating and lonely and stigmatizing that can be. So even if there aren't mental health and behavioral problems at the outset, now we get them because the kids are being singled out and not, they're being excluded. They're being marginalized. These words have meanings, and this is exactly what we're talking about. You could tell which kids struggled with emotional regulation. You could tell which kids struggled with impulse control. And obviously, not every kid that struggles with inappropriate behavior, impulse control, has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And alcohol is so center to our culture. And we are so hesitant to blame women for, we used to say getting into trouble as a euphemism for an unplanned pregnancy. And what terrible language, right? But there are so many competing forces that make this difficult to talk about. A lot of people just shy away. I am not that sort of person. So after the break, I am going to introduce you to two. I haven't known these ladies very long, but I already like them so much, and you're going to find out why. They are dynamic, they are passionate, they are wonderful speakers, and they're going to inform you in a cool way about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I'm going to have Mary and Allison from Harrison's Hope, HARRISONS Hope, on after the break to talk about, why Mary started this charitable organization, why Allison got involved. They are both directly affected in some way by FASD. And again, it is FASD Awareness Month. So if you feel inclined, please post on social media about this stuff. Please link to Harrison's Hope.ca, HARRISONSHOPE.ca. Please link, because we want to spread awareness. We want to spread compassion. When we come back, questions, comments, any concerns, Leanna at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. At nottherapyshow on social media. We'll be back learning about FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I'm going to screw that up more on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back and It's Not Therapy. I'm still Leanna Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We're still talking fetal alcohol syndrome. What is it? And these two ladies who are with me now are the reason we're doing this topic. I met Alison Drenico at the Finding a Way event, and we started talking about fetal alcohol syndrome. I have members of my family affected by it. We see how it affects an entire family. I have seen how people just don't get it, and there's a lot of weirdness is the only way I can say, Alison, around it. She is on the board of directors of Harrison's Hope, and she brought in Mary Burns Harrison, the executive director and founder of Harrison's Hope. So, ladies, we are here to talk about fetal alcohol syndrome. And the first challenge is defining it, because it is a spectrum condition.
Absolutely.
Correct? And it manifests very, very differently depending on a lot of different conditions. Sometimes it's just, facial features that are a little different. Sometimes it's memory, sometimes it's impulse control, but you are the experts. Where do we start talking about this?
Leanna, if I can jump in, because this is a topic that clearly is near and dear to both Alison's heart and mine. It's interesting that we're having this conversation in the month of September, which is International FASD Awareness Month. And we're leading up to a very special global day of recognition on September 9th. Now, what does FASD stand for? It stands for Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. And the reason that name has come about and is recognized fairly widely around the globe these days is because of what you just said. This disability, and it is a lifelong disability, we don't outgrow it, actually is a spectrum of symptoms of this disability. And when you asked us to define it, if we look at CanFASD, which is the Canadian National Research Foundation for this topic, they define FASD as the full body, both brain and body, impairment caused by exposure to alcohol in utero. And what a lot of people mistakenly think, and I know Alison's experienced this, and so have I as a caregiver, is that, oh, well, you have to have a thin upper lip and a flat philanthrum, and you have to have very narrow set eyes. Well, what's really interesting about that is less than 9% of those diagnosed with FASD actually have any physical symptoms or signs. Because when we think about it, when alcohol is consumed during a pregnancy, regardless of what state the pregnancy is at, whether it's day one of conception right up to the day of delivery, that alcohol becomes a teratogen, which most other drugs are not, and it crosses that safety filter, the placenta. So whatever cells, and this is important to think of, whatever cells are developing on that date and time
Hmm.
during that pregnancy, those are the cells that are damaged permanently. And only on days 18 to 21 of a pregnancy
Yeah.
are when the facial features are developed. So there's more than 90% of the population walking around with an invisible disability.
Yeah, because it can affect the developing fetus before a woman even knows she's pregnant or a person knows they're pregnant.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's one of
Absolutely.
those things that makes this super dicey, right? Because
Yeah.
I know when I was doing peer counseling back in, the Jane Finch area where I grew up in, 50% of pregnancies were unplanned
That's right.
back
And
then.
that number's not better. It's actually worse now.
Oh, really? It's worse.
Yes, it's worse.
Wow.
It's high. The percentages are higher. And really, sadly, we don't in Canada have a national framework around FASD. And as a result, women's health systems and services
Yeah.
aren't supporting women who are considering becoming pregnant, let alone those who come to find themselves in that state very unexpectedly. Um, there's no shame and blame in that. And
Right.
there's no shame and blame in the fact that we do better when we know better. And if we don't talk about the effects of alcohol during a pregnancy, how can we prevent it and reduce it?
Right.
This is a global issue. This is
Okay.
not unique to Canada. And the rates in Canada are about 4% of the Canadian population is diagnosed with it. But let me tell you, there are hundreds of individuals of all ages and stages either misdiagnosed with something else or undiagnosed. I fell into that category of undiagnosed until about 18 months ago in my late 50s when my mother shared with me. I always knew I was a surprise entry with siblings 6 and 8 years older. But she told me she was 6 months pregnant with me before she knew she was going to have me. She thought she was going through early menopause. So remember when I come back to the women's health services, we
Yes.
know better when we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
Allison, maybe you can share a little bit about what you've come to understand is different when it comes to FASD compared to Down syndrome and Tourette's and cerebral palsy. Uh, when we combine all of those together, we still don't get the same level of diagnoses of 4% of Canadians, do we? Right?
Really.
We're we're a large number of invisible people.
And that's diagnosed. Like there
That's
are some,
diagnosed.
yeah, yeah,
Many that
yes.
aren't.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, because it's not enough for them to intervene. So Allison, you were telling me at the event that you are a carer. You are a caregiver for someone affected. And I mean, you speak very passionately about this. So what do you want to know? We've done the statistics, but statistics, let's face it, they go in one ear, out the other. I'm fascinated, but let's get to the human element of it. Where do you want to start? What do you want people to know?
Well, I think, there's the one part that Mary was talking about of what FASD is, but the big point that I think we miss is about the individuals who are living with it. Like my granddaughter, who I am a guardian of. Um, her world is tough. I mean, imagine trying to be in classrooms keeping up when you have this brain that doesn't work the exactly same way. You can't relate to peers. Everyone's expecting you to do things because you don't look like you have an issue. Um, and then that's not the case. So it's very stressful for her. And everyone doesn't want to talk about it because that means we're bringing up what caused it. But we really need to look at how do we support these individuals in our communities because they need all of our support. They need people to take that 5 minutes on September 9th and become FASD aware. At least see how you could help an individual. Maybe you could recognize it. Maybe there's some strategies as a teacher, as a lawyer, because unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that are trained to deal with these individuals. And unfortunately, can cause harm because they aren't informed. We had an issue with a lawyer, and they meant well, don't get me wrong. But the problem is, if you don't understand how her brain works, you can re-traumatize her without even knowing. So as a caregiver, that's my biggest issue that I keep trying to fight is I don't want my granddaughter re-traumatized because people aren't informed. That's not fair. She has enough on her plate. She's got enough issues without that. So I want her world to be better for her because I won't be here for her her
Yeah.
whole life.
Yeah.
Right. So I need other people to be able to step up when I'm not here and make sure she can have a great life. And even when I'm here, she deserves to be able to go to school and feel that she's in the right place and not feel different and not want to go because it's over our head and we're getting 2 out of 20 on a test because, we're not properly identified yet, or the school, you're working on where she should be at.
Mhm.
Right. There's a
Yeah.
lot of tough decisions there.
Yeah, yeah, and getting the best outcome for her as opposed to some standardized something, right? The quality versus quantity argument.
Well,
Uh,
and
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I didn't mean
Yeah,
to cut you off there, but
no
I'm very
problem.
passionate about this because I'm dealing with it currently. Is I don't want to hear about your affecting her pathway later in life. We're not worried about college or university, but if my child can't do single multiplication, you can't expect her to 2, 3 digit multiplication. We have to go back to the basics,
Yeah.
get her to do the single multiplications before we moved on to the second. If that means we can't stay at grade curriculum, I'm okay with it because I want her to learn. And she will, if she's meant to go to college, university, she will get there even without the standard route.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. The standard route doesn't work for everyone. Now let's go to a break because you have to do some caregiving right now, right, Allison? Like we have to take a bit of a pause here. So
Yeah.
let's go to break. We'll come back with Allison and Mary from Harrison's Hope, a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Yeah, okay, I got it right.
Yes, she nailed
Organization
it.
talking about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder because September is Awareness Month for the condition. When we come back on It's Not Therapy, questions, comments, concerns, Leanna at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. Fill out the contact form. Not Therapy Show on social media, or you can contact Mary and Allison directly at harrisonshope.ca. We'll come back, talk more fetal alcohol spectrum disorder on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Leanna Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking fetal alcohol spectrum disorder with Mary and Allison from Harrison's Hope. And before the break, we were talking with Allison about her personal experiences and a carer, and it brought up my thoughts of when back in the day when I worked with youth, working with adults now. It was funny, Mary, you were saying that people don't know it and so it gets missed.
Absolutely.
We have a protocol where we assume autism, trauma, fetal alcohol until we see evidence otherwise. Now you're saying that's not the norm.
Sadly, it's not the norm.
Okay.
Sadly,
Right. And that's going to create, I mean, obviously a lot of shame, a lot of what's wrong with me. The behavioral issues were the reason when I worked with youth that we assumed it because, I mean, one of the really challenging elements is the lack of impulse control. So a kid could be taking a swing at a teacher or a carer or a supervisor or something like that, and that would be treated as a behavior problem. But if you treat it as a behavior problem and it's actually a cognitive issue, you're going to re-traumatize that kid.
over and over and
Right,
over. And
right,
guess who else gets the blame and the shame in that? The caregiver, because they're obviously crappy parents, right? They
right,
don't know what to do and they need another parenting therapeutic course to
right.
make them better parents, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, complex trauma is not recognized as a formal diagnosis yet, even though sort of, colloquially, everybody recognizes that it can be a lifetime of smaller things as opposed to one big traumatic event, and you just have these
Exactly.
scripts going on in your head. And a lot of the time, you do get both. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
intergenerational trauma, intergenerational abuse. This all goes into it. And again, September is FASD Awareness Month. That's why we're talking about it. I want to talk about the shame component. And I admit, I don't even know where to begin because this is so layered, right?
Yep.
You've got the shame that women kind of experience on the daily as being
Yep.
sort of social and sexual gatekeepers.
Yep.
And then you've got the shame of the potential diagnosis of the diagnosis requiring um the mother
Confirmation.
or yeah somebody
Confirmation of
admits.
alcohol consumption during that pregnancy. You got
Right,
it.
right. And so that's a very shameful thing to own up
Absolutely.
and say, yeah, I did a bad, because I mean, bad mom, good Lord. But it's weird, right? Because we live in an age where you can't admit that, and yet the wine mom is
Isn't
this
that interesting?
trope.
The whole
So,
pinkify of alcohol, right?
yeah, can we talk
Going
about
right
that?
after the key market. So the pinkifying of alcohol is making it more user friendly and
Yeah,
more in demand, right? And here's the challenge of that. Um, we don't have well-defined and supported women's health services, but here's the kicker. We're pinkifying alcohol and we're telling women, oh, hey, let's have another cocktail. It's safe, it's fine, it's good. But when it comes to the back end of supporting individuals who this becomes an addiction for,
right.
we also are lacking the proper supports and services in that system.
Yeah,
So, do we not have the perfect recipe if you're female? You are of age to conceive and carry a child, and now a teratogen like alcohol is being marketed specifically to you and you don't know, and your doctors don't tell you because many of them, we still hear today that doctors are saying, oh, it's okay to have a glass of wine during pregnancy. Oh, it's okay in the last month, one before bed or, before in the last month of your pregnancy. Let's face it, there is no safe time, no safe amount. That's what the research shows. And yet when it happens, we go back and we blame. We put the blame and the shame
yeah,
squarely on the maternal party for having consumed that alcohol. How is that right and just and fair? It's
yeah.
not.
Th-
We
this is
need to
where
address these systems.
this is where we get into the thorniness of this because of, that gatekeeper status. I said,
Yes.
you're supposed to prevent an assault. You're supposed to prevent an unplanned pregnancy. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you somehow. And that's all wrong. Life happens, right?
Right.
Nobody plans to get taken advantage of.
No.
And so I agree with what you were saying before the break. And Allison, I'm sure you can speak to this as well as a carer who kind of gets judged if you're kind of open about this stuff. The idea that instead, we're very big on blame and punishment in our society. We're not good at the restorative or the supportive element because we're so fixated on the blame part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Allison, how do we start making this better? I mean, talking about it is one thing. Making the changes are totally different. How did your family get past? Because I'm sure the shame's real, right? Like I'm sure you feel it. You just work with it.
Yeah, you definitely feel like everyone's thinking like I'm the mom, I drank, I'm getting blamed, like even
Hmm.
though I'm the grandma, right? Um, but I think the biggest part is we have to talk about it. And whether it makes people uncomfortable, I mean, we have to do it. And I think we need to like as a caregiver, it's important for me to be raising my granddaughter to accept herself for who she is.
Yeah.
And that includes the diagnosis of FASD. And she needs not to be ashamed of that, but she also has to become the best advocate for her to be as
Mhm.
independent and to move on in her life. She needs to let people know where she needs assistance or the cognitive issue she's having due to FASD.
Right.
But I can tell you, because I'm raising a child like that, people really judge me. And I've had family members say, "Do you really think it's okay that she says she has FASD?" I'm like, "But she does."
Right.
Right. And I said, and people need to know because sometimes when they hear her talk or they can tell that she's just not getting it, it's there, but they don't know what it is. So I just feel that in order for people to understand her, they need to understand all of her. And
Right.
FASD is included, so our family will not be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I go ahead, Mary.
that's where organizations like Harrison's Hope comes in. The what Allison is sharing is the bitter truth, the bitter pill, if you will, of this disability is it's the stigma that creates the isolation
Yeah.
from your friends and family. It's not just our amazing kiddos with this disability being pushed aside by community, not being included in, you know, birthday parties and street neighborhood kid play
Right.
dates. It's the parents being excluded. It's the blind twitching when the police are on the street because one of our loved ones has eloped, but no one's crossing the street saying, "Hey, are you guys okay? Can we help you?" So it's about finding your community, Leanna. Harrison's Hope came to be because I decided that instead of being a caregiver who was isolated and felt blamed and shamed, that I had to be a part of the solution.
Hmm.
And the solution was to offer a charity that could provide supports for both our loved ones with FASD, but also the caregivers throughout the lifespan of both.
Yeah.
Nobody is doing that in Canada. So lifespan means we talk about awareness and prevention and education. That's a tiny piece.
Mhm.
The other piece is bringing together caregivers with a commonality, and that just happens to be that our loved ones are either suspected of having FASD or diagnosed with it. We have a community of caregivers at Harrison's Hope that when we're not in a stable place, we can talk to one another in weekly caregiver virtual support groups. We can share questions and comments and wins and frustrations on a Facebook page that's a private group. We can get together for in-person events. And then when our families are really stable and our caregivers are starting to do more than just come up for air, now they're helping other caregivers by giving back, which is exactly what Allison is doing. Allison, because she's been supported and because she's got strength to become the powerful advocate that she is, can now give back by speaking out at events on behalf of Harrison's Hope as a caregiver.
Mhm.
And let's face it, Leanna, that's how you met her
It really
at an
is.
event.
I mean, you're describing peer counseling 101. I mean, that's what I do as
Exactly.
well on a different and it's for people who are listening, especially on the radio, if you're in your car and that what online support, harrisonshope.ca, no apostrophe, Harrison's two R's hope.ca. Please reach out. Yes, there are virtual caregiver supports. And I want to talk a bit about what we do
Yep.
because they love to push this stuff away in dark rooms.
Sure
You
they
know,
do.
send the autistic kid for treatment.
Yep.
Put the epilepsy kid in a safe job where they don't hurt themselves. Like, go away so we can care about you. But
So
that doesn't work.
we are not going away.
Yeah.
We are not crawling back in under a rock. Just because my brain is wired differently than your brain doesn't mean I can't be successful. The secret to everyone thriving in the communities of their choice is to be properly supported and accommodated where and when help is needed. And I always liken it to, do you do your own dental work? I don't.
I was
I
just
don't
at the
cut
dentist.
I
No.
don't cut my own hair either. So why wouldn't I ask for help when I'm having a difficult day and I can't find my words? When I can say, Leanna, you know what? After 3 p.m., my brain has worked 10 times harder to keep up all day, and I'm starting to struggle to find my words. I can advocate and I can say that. And I can choose whether I say, listen, the reason my brain's so tired and then the fact that it's working 10 times harder is because I didn't sleep last night. Or I can be honest and say, it also is the fact that the executive functioning portion of my brain, that frontal lobe, that parental lobe, is affected by FASD.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
It's
Is
one of
it going
these.
to change your life? No. But will you support me and ask Allison more questions? Yes.
See, I
Right?
would argue it changes my life for the better to have these conversations because I have found whenever we create more inclusive policy, for instance, like opting people out of these assumptions instead of opting people in, it makes my team better. These are actually better policies for everybody
Everybody.
because I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says, nobody has perfect executive function.
Nope.
We all have things we're better at. We all have things we're worse at. And if we find ways to include more people, we get the benefit of not only all the skills, but the unique perspective that will catch things that other people won't. And Allison, the thing I noticed about you when I talked to you at the event was even though you're a very fiery advocate, you have an intense compassion
Yeah.
about you as well. And I think with women, we need to stop treating compassion as weakness, which is why I'm really happy to have you on. Because I mean, just people hearing you talk, you're no shrinking violet, but
No, she's not.
you changed your entire life for your kids, and you chose to bring these kids into your life. You didn't have to. So can you talk a bit about owning that choice and how other people can do it? Because I think it's a very, very important thing that these kids are not burdens. With a lot in the disability communities, it's so hard instead of this has made us better.
Yeah, and originally we walked in this not knowing, right? These kids were in need, they're family members, and we chose to keep them out of the system, and it was just for me and my husband, there was no option to us. Everyone around us seemed to have a bigger issue, like, do you know what you're doing? Taking on these children. But for us, I mean, it's a godsend knowing you can change the lives of these children who didn't have the greatest life. You know what I mean? And the fact that they've taught us so much. You know what I mean? As much as, yes, we've had to go, my husband jokes as he's older than me, that am I ever going to be done parenting classes? Because, we tackle new subjects. But again, to us, it's just natural. Like how could you leave them to the system?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I think as us choosing that, I mean, it just wasn't even a choice. Like it was just they were in need and we stepped up and we just started calling around and trying to find as many people to help. And like originally we didn't know FASD. That was 2 years into having the children.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've only had them for 6 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And there's sort of well, gee, that was obvious after the fact, but can you ladies hang on for like one more segment? I want to go long on this because there's a whole other bucket I want to kind of talk about. So when we come back, Mary and Allison from Harrison's Hope, an FASD support group, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, harrisonshope.ca. Harrison's 2 R's, 1 S, no apostrophe hope.ca if you want to be connected to services, not just if you have a diagnosis, if you suspect that a member of your family may be impacted by alcohol they were exposed to in utero, please reach out, harrisonshope.ca. We're going to go to a break on It's Not Therapy. Come back with more on Mary and Allison for our final segment. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back and it's not therapy. I'm still Leanna Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still in our last segment, but we are still in the interview of the show as well. I wanted to keep Mary and Allison from Harrison's Hope, harrisonshope.ca, Harrison's 2 R's, 1 S, no apostrophe, hope.ca. I'm pushing the website because, yes, these ladies are here to offer you free services. If you even suspect that you have a family member who is touched by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Now, what I want to do is, if the theme of this makes us better, community makes us better, getting everybody thriving to their potential, not some artificial standard that society puts on them, but their standard. I know, I mean, Allison, when I met you, I did a talk on going good crazy because sanity didn't work for me. And, you know, I end this show every time called You're Crazy is Only a Problem If It's Hurting You. And the reason I go that way is people expect, oh, it's this woman with a PTSD diagnosis. We're going to get a 10-minute trauma dump for this talk. And I go out and start cracking jokes and I sang songs and literally went good crazy. This doesn't have to be a dirge, right? This doesn't have to be misery. There is joy in these lives. There is joy in these people. So, Allison, I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you share kind of a moment where you felt that joy? You're like, yeah, this is giving me more than I'm giving it.
You know what? It was actually at a Harrison's Hope fundraiser. We were doing a booth, sorry, at the Strawberry Festival in Stouffville. And I decided to bring my granddaughter with me because she wanted to be more involved. And Mary has this great way of talking to people, giving them information when she came. And I let her be with Mary. And Mary was talking about FASD and that they help people. And my granddaughter brightly, boldly says, they help people like me. And how proud and how comfortable she was in the situation. That's where all the lights, it made everything worthwhile in that moment.
Mary, that's got to be humbling because I know when people say, I helped them, I have to not push it away, but at the same time, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like they are helping me pay an obligation to society, right? Yeah. We are given challenges in the world so that we get to show the world the best parts of us. So
100%.
Yeah. So how can people, if they're fired up by this, if Allison did her thing and made everybody feel like, I want to do this,
Absolutely.
do you need volunteers? What do
Yes,
you guys need?
absolutely.
Like, how can the greater community support the community you're building?
You know, this is the best month to ask that question, but we can use the help year round. Harrison's Hope is about helping caregivers, helping their loved ones. So accept us in the community. When we have community events, come out. If you want to volunteer time, whether you're a high school student, a retiree, um, a college student, university student, PhD student, we have work for you that you can do. We are a registered charity and we can't be all to everyone without lots of help. I'm proud that we have a volunteer board and that board of director has a couple of caregivers with lived experience on the board. I'd love to have more of them. There are lots of ways to give back to Harrison's Hope and to the families we support. Follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn. Harrison's Hope is on Insta and Facebook. Follow us, like us, tell people about us. We're an organic growth organization, and good news travels fast. Bad news travels even faster. So I'm happy to get any airtime anyway, because the bottom line is our caregivers and their loved ones deserve it. We don't end our programs when our loved ones turn 18 and become adults. We offer supports throughout that lifespan. So we have programs for youth transitioning into adulthood.
That's great.
We are beginning to offer respite services. So maybe you want to volunteer your time to help being a respite worker. there's a lot our community can give back by just welcoming us all with open arms. That's the reality.
Yeah. Respite workers are so invaluable. Absolutely. If you've got a couple hours a week, even that matters to a family. I will add, if I can soapbox for a bit, when I run events, we make sure we have really fun mocktails as well as cocktails. So people can have an adult drink. They're not just drinking, soda. They're drinking something that tastes grown up without the alcohol. And that is something that can just move us away from that culture of you need a drink to have a good
Absolutely.
time, right?
Yep.
Anything you can do to decenter alcohol from joy, from celebration, from togetherness,
Yep.
that can really help as well. Not just with people with fetal alcohol spectrum
Everybody.
disorder, people who are recovering alcoholics, people who were the children of alcoholics and have a really bad association with workplace drinking culture.
Yep.
I work with
All that.
quite a few people who don't go to workplace events because they're too boozy.
Yep.
And I know there are some people that they got really drunk at a work event and never could unsee again.
Yep.
It really does. So let's,
Ugly.
yeah,
Ugly.
yeah. And it's just sort of, you're still at work, even when it's a work party, and you're still a member of the community, even when you want to cut loose and not overthink things. There are other ways to do it. That's why I talk about going good crazy. Mary Burns, Harrison, Allison Drenico, Harrison's Hope. Have I missed anything, ladies? Is there anything you want to close with?
I would just like to close with everyone. It would be truly an honor if people listening to this on September 9th could post something on FASD awareness. That would be a really good tribute to my granddaughter. I would truly be blessed if you guys could do that for us and for Harrison's Hope. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
harrisonshope.ca. harrisonshope.ca. Harrison's, 2 R's, 1 S, no apostrophe, hope.ca. Mary Allison, thanks so much for your time and your passion. All right, that's our show. Weren't they wonderful? I thought they're so wonderful. But yes, again, please, if you can, send out a tweet, post on Facebook, make people aware not only that harrisonshope.ca is out there, but also for people who think they might have a family affected by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. You don't have to be sure. You just have to suspect. Please just reach out. And they also have a charity auction coming up on the 9th. If you're listening to this after the fact on podcast version, okay, you missed it, but still check them out anyway. But check out my social media, not therapy show, on social media for information about the Harrison Hope .ca silent auction, or check them out directly. If you missed any of that, if you mess up the website trying to put it in, Leanna@nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. Fill out the contact form. I will get you in touch with Harrison's Hope. Let's help build a world, build a community where kids can realize their potential no matter where they start in life. Maybe crazy dream, but it's a good kind of crazy. I think this was a crazy good show. You know what I'm going to say? Your crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. See you next time.